All right, so we need to move on. We need to move on to a show we've been planning since February 3rd, which was Groundhog's Day.
Yes.
It was your idea, which is a very good idea. So February 3rd was Groundhog's Day, and Punxsutawney Phil did not see a shadow, meaning in early spring this year.
Yes.
And you had the great idea of let's talk about 3 movies that revolve around Groundhog's Day. One being Groundhog's Day, the classic with Bill Murray. And then Palm Springs, which came out last year or year before?
It came out in 2020.
Oh, that's right. It was right before COVID.
Yeah.
Palm Springs with Andy Samberg, and then we have
Edge of Tomorrow with Tom, or Live.Die.Repeat, depending on who you're talking to.
With Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt.
Yes. So the idea with this was not only is it a Groundhog's Day thing, but like this is a new micro genre. I'm sure that somebody else had done this before, Ramis, but since Groundhog's Day, now when you're making a movie like this, you almost have to admit to the audience that you know what Groundhog's Day is.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you have to in some way kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yes, we know this is Groundhog's Day, but we're doing it different. And it's just so interesting to look at how different people have approached this central conceit, where Groundhog's Day as its own thing is very different from something like Edge of Tomorrow. We also were going to do Happy Death Day, but 3 was enough. 4 is a little too much.
I do want to give a shout out to Happy Death Day. When I first saw that movie and saw the trailer, I was like, it looks like another cheesy teen horror movie. But then when I watched it, I was like, it actually wasn't bad.
Isn't bad.
It was enjoyable. And it was humorous.
Yeah.
I liked the lead. She was great. And it's like, okay.
I've seen about half of it. I've never made it through the whole thing. Because I just saw it on TV. So I haven't even made it through half of it. Because when you watch the TV version of a movie, very rarely are you actually, especially a horror movie.
Well, that's true.
Are you very actually watching a movie? So I do need to actually go and watch it. But it is just, the lead portrayal is so good in a lot of scenes, and just the way that she is handling the situation, because that's really what the movie is. The movie isn't being in a time loop. The movie is watching what someone does while they are trapped in a time loop, and seeing how that develops or doesn't develop them as an individual, and which we're going to get to with Edge of Tomorrow. But let's start with
Groundhog Day. We have to start with the granddaddy.
Yes.
So Harold Ramis directed, Andy McDowell and Bill Murray in Groundhog's Day.
Yes. You don't want to talk about Chris Elliott? You want to give kudos to Chris Elliott? I don't like Chris Elliott.
Chris Elliott, I liked him in Something About Mary. He was okay in this. He was a little obnoxious. The only thing I laughed at with him is when they were doing the bachelor auction, and he got up and tried to look sexy, and a woman bought him for $0.25. It's like, okay, that's good.
I like the moment where he looks out and he blocks the line. He's like, oh shit.
Yeah, oh shit. So,
but I don't like Chris Elliott in a lot of stuff. I find him annoying.
Yeah.
And I just don't care for him.
He actually hit his peak when he was a side character on Late Night with David Letterman, because that's where he first made his bones.
Yeah.
And he would come out as a scientist, and I remember him eating dog food once because he wanted to test the dog food. And it's he was really good
That's
at that.
his thing.
But then his movies
I remember him in the Nickelodeon movie Snow Day. And he's just awful.
Yeah, it's awful. And he was awful in Scream 2, where he played the weird butler.
Yeah.
And he was dumb. And
yeah. He always plays weird butlers or people with weird pustules or boils.
Which, that was the only time I laughed was Something About Mary. We got the rash. Yeah. And it was just because he was so in love with Mary. And that was the only time.
Yeah.
But he was also only in 5 minutes of that movie.
Exactly.
So that made it even better.
So anyway, Groundhog's Day, just rewatched it. It's a treasure.
It really is.
There are elements of it. I did turn to Kelly at one point and I said, I don't know that I've ever seen a human being who is as charismatic and uncharming as Bill Murray. Bill Murray is so you like hanging out with him. He's awful. He's just a terrible person, but the entire time you're like, it's okay, it's all right. And it's like, why am I allowing this reprehensible behavior from this character?
Because it's him himself. It reminds me of Zombieland when he gets shot and he does that slow letting his air out, and Emma Stone starts laughing, and she goes, I just can't help it. That's Bill Murray.
Yeah.
He'll just do something, and you're like,
well, that's a lot of his characters to me. Venkman, I struggle with Venkman as a character.
Oh, see, I love Venkman.
Because I want to love Venkman, but some of the things he does and says,
he's a douchebag.
Oh, dude, I can't with you, man. I can't do it.
Well, Dana Barrett gives him the best compliment of his character, saying you're like a game show host, because he really is. He is like a game show host, which they're fake and it's cringy, but you can't help but be like,
Yeah. So Bill Murray here, though, gives a very good performance. Andy McDowell, I think, gives an okay performance. I do wish I had more from her as a character.
I've said that about her in almost every movie I've seen her in. I have nothing against her, but like Four Weddings and a Funeral, Green Card, I think was the name of it. And it's like, you watch these movies with her, and then she was also in St. Elmo's Fire, opposite Andrew McCarthy. And you're like, she's okay.
Yeah, she's not.
There's nothing against her.
Hudson Hawk, I remember seeing her in Hudson Hawk.
Hudson Hawk I enjoyed just because she was weird.
Yeah.
But it's like...
Well, everything about Hudson Hawk is weird.
Everything's weird,
When she shows up as an honest-to-God nun.
Yeah.
I was just like, what the fuck
And then has the
happening?
dolphin talking. And you're like, okay, this is fucking weird.
It was weird. But just... I forgot she was in Muppets from Space, too. Jesus Christ. No, I don't have anything against her. I think her part wasn't written to be amazing.
It was a classic kind of late 80s, early 90s where it's like the female's kind of a side note.
There's really only one character that gets to star in this movie, and that is Bill Murray as Phil. No. not Bill Murray's brother. No, not him either. No. But I because I think that's true of everybody in this movie. I don't know that there's anybody in this movie that you latch onto and you're like, I really like this character. The problem is that Rita is such a central character to everything that's happening, between it being the one thing that Bill Murray is reaching for and the one person we see more than anybody else in various iterations. And I did want a little bit more out of that character, especially like I wanted to understand why Phil likes her in the first place. It seems like she's at various points just an object of accomplishment for him, of like, if I can just get her, then...
And that's the one problem with that, is I think that was the whole point of this entire movie. And then he just... Because didn't somebody say that he's like 10,000 years or something?
He's been there for thousands of years.
And it's just... Over that time, he fell in love with her.
Yeah.
Where at first, I think it was just a conquest, but then as decades and millennia went by, he actually fell in love with her.
And it's so weird because you get so many different... I mean, obviously, you get different looks at the same scene, and we're going to talk about how this is done in all these movies. But the way that they do it here is so different from the other movies, very honestly, where it is just such a full recreation of the exact same scene.
Yes.
And right down to the camera work, right down to the roll-in and everything. It's just the timing, the pacing, everything is exactly the same. And then you just have like one little alternate thing where Bill Murray says or does something a little different.
See, and I would love to see like a behind-the-scenes filming of this, because they must have just filmed those scenes one right after another on the same day to get the same lighting, get the same everything. And it's just like, I would love to have known, watch it behind the scenes.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating to see kind of the progression of everything, because it happens at such a different pace than I remembered.
Yeah.
Because you get to the beginning and he realizes it is in the same day and you're like, okay, all right. And then immediately he starts going for Rita. I was like, oh, I thought that happened in like the second half of the movie. And then he has his breakdown after Rita rejects him, and he kind of just falls into this million-year stupor of just kind of bopping around this town, meeting people, doing stupid shit. And then he has another meeting with Rita, and that's when he's like, I will make myself a better person.
Yeah.
And then I will achieve her. And I don't know. I like this movie a lot. I also think it's very of its time. I could easily see showing this to a kid these days and having them be like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. Oh my God. And
especially with what was the woman that he ends up seducing over a short period of time?
Yes, what's her name?
And said that when she gets excited, she makes a noise like a squirrel.
Yeah.
And I can't Nancy. Even that, it's like, it's not like he did anything inappropriate, but it still was cringy.
Well, so this is always the thing, as I remember hearing my boys on Welcome to the Basement talking about this, and they were like, it doesn't matter. For them, it's always the first day.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if, like, Bill Murray is thinking of it differently or doing it from a different place in terms of his heart. For them, it's always the first day. And that was kind of something that I brought into this viewing of, like, but how does this impact them on the first day? Because I do feel like with Rita, what's interesting and something that I wish Ramis had kind of gone into is that she can tell something's happening.
Yes.
She doesn't know what, but she can tell something hinky's going on.
Yeah.
And I really wish they had leaned into that, because it kind of helps alleviate the issue of this is always their first day, because now she has some inkling, some sense that something else is going on here. And it also gives us as an audience kind of this doorway in of, like, this isn't just something weird that just happened. This is a cosmic event that is making this happen. And, you know, I don't need an explanation on that any more than that. I don't need them to go into, like, I don't need the third act to be like Bill Murray goes to heaven and confronts God and the clockmaker. Like, I don't fucking care about that. That's not important to me. Is it a little weird at the end of the movie when he just kind of snaps out of it and he's suddenly in the next day because Rita stayed with him the whole night? Yeah, it's not necessarily the most satisfying ending.
It also made me question, because I watched it recently too, I wish they would have continued on, because he has all of this
skills,
knowledge and skills. Yeah. It's like, what does the character do now? Does he just go back to being a weatherman? Or he could rule the fucking world with the knowledge he has.
Because he's trying to save the old man who dies every night, he gains enough medical information to feel confident looking at a patient's chart and reading it. I couldn't do that. If I went in and I said, give me their chart, and I looked at it, I'd be like, this doesn't fucking make any... I don't know what this means. None of this fucking means shit to me. What's an O2 level? And he clearly gains a great deal of knowledge while he's in there, not just playing the piano, but doing a bunch of different things. And, like, I go back to the fact that he knows where he has to be for the entire town for the whole day.
Yep.
That would take so long. Think about that in terms of a video game. You have 2,000 NPCs in a town, which is still smaller than what he ends up doing in Punxsutawney. And you go around and you talk to every one of those NPCs enough so you know their entire daily routine of 2,000 people. And you know when you have to be here at this time to make this happen. He was in there a long goddamn time.
He was in there a long fucking time. And I do like, there was an urban legend going around that, you know, of course it's just people online, but that Ned Ryerson was like the angel of death.
I do love that idea.
And that's kind of cool, because he does drive him fucking nuts. And I wish, you don't really get, like, to me, the only end to that storyline was them at the Bachelor auction where she wins Bill Murray and they go off.
Yeah.
And you see Ned laughing. And that was it with him. And it's like, that character was such an integral kind of
it's so
part
interesting.
of each of one of his days.
Because all at once, I do love both ideas. I love what we get where Ned Ryerson is just an idiot. Yeah. He's just an idiot. He's just another guy in town who's just an idiot. And there's nothing deeper, more nefarious. And by the end of the movie, Bill Murray buys every kind of insurance under the sun from him. And he's just this another victim of Phil and his terrible behavior, where he's like, you don't remember me? You told me never to date your sister and that you would kill me if I ever dated your sister. You don't remember me? Doesn't ring a bell. And, it, you know, like, he is just as low as anybody else. I love the idea that he's secretly the villain. Yeah. Especially since that actor, what's his name? Stephen Tobolowsky. He has such a great villain face. They use it in Heroes. I remember years later I saw him as a villain in Heroes. I was like, what the fuck are you doing here? But it works. Yeah. Because he seems like this nice, innocent guy, and then there's this turn where he's this dark asshole. And I just love the idea that at some point Phil realizes, like, you're faking it. Yeah. You do know who I am. You do know what's going on. And you know. Yeah. You know that I'm stuck here. Why do you know that? And that would just be a whole other plot line. And it's like, that would be fascinating.
And then you could take into account, they don't play off that he bought all that insurance from him, except for that last day.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why he snapped out of it, is because of that, not because of Andie MacDowell. And it's like, you don't know.
I would love to see a mini series that was the last day in Groundhog's Day and just the different things that Phil did.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you're just kind of left being like, which act that Phil did on his last day was actually the thing that got him out.
Yes. Because it might not have been her.
Exactly. That would be amazing.
Wouldn't that be fucking amazing?
That would be great.
I thought about that when we were watching. I was like,
that would be
cool.
amazing. See, and this is why I wanted to talk about this.
Yeah.
It's such a genre dripping with options.
Yes.
But it's so different from any other genre. Like you usually have there's a bunch of action movies, and then Steven Spielberg comes along and makes Raiders. And now action movies are always trying to chase what that is. This is a genre that was created by one person. Yeah. And then other people have just come in and been like, hey, I like this genre. Let me iterate on it and see what I can make out of it. But I've never seen something that was so whole cloth made by one guy. Like, there may have been other time loop movies out there. No one knows what they are. If you talk about time loop movies, everybody always goes to Groundhog's Day.
Yeah. The biggest comparison to me with this, it'd be George Romero's First Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
That introduced the zombies that we all know.
Yeah.
Because zombies prior to that were very stereotypical, dark-skinned individuals who were just walking around with their eyes wide open.
Yeah, just ghouls.
And George Romero created the zombie that we know.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is the closest to that, where you, like you said, you have Harold Ramis wrote and directed this movie, and it's like, everything after this goes to this movie.
And you have to at least acknowledge. You have to do like a little head tilt, which they do in Palm Springs. I thought that they did it really well in Palm Springs.
Which would be a good transition.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's transition. Because Palm Springs is Groundhog's Day, but there's two people.
Yes.
Like that is the central premise.
And there's an actual explanation of what's causing it.
But like that's one of the fun things about Palm Springs is that when Christine Melody gets pulled into this whole situation, Andy Samberg has already been in it for who knows how long, which is so fascinating because just being dropped in and meeting this guy, you're like, oh, this guy's got a weird energy. And then you're like, wait a minute, hang on a second. He's been here. He knows what's happening. And we as an audience don't know, but he knows. So when she is pulled into this whole thing and he's like, oh yeah, it's a time loop. You know time loops. Yeah, I kind of vaguely do know time loops, actually. If you tell me you know time loops, I kind of know how that works and the physics of it and everything. But they change little things of it. It's not that the day resets at 6 a.m., which is what it is in Groundhog's Day.
Yes.
It's that when you fall asleep, so if you take a nap, the day resets. To which I say, so if someone takes a nap, but now there's multiple people experiencing the day, if Andy Samberg takes a nap, he doesn't wake up until the day resets, but Christine Melody is still in that day. Does she just see Andy Samberg taking the infinite nap, where he's just taking this nap that he cannot be roused from? I read that
as, like, if he went to sleep, he's just asleep until she falls asleep, and then they both wake up at the same time.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like, but his body still must be somewhere in the world.
Yeah, that is true.
So if you go around and you find, like, Andy Samberg and he just accidentally fell asleep on a couch, does the entire wedding take place with Andy Samberg just passed out on this couch?
That could be.
Even doctors, you can bring in like a line of doctors, no one can wake him up and he won't wake up because she has to fall asleep and then they both wake up at the same time.
That's interesting.
But I love the way that the rules change because as a result of that, you get this great moment in the second, third-ish act, that kind of handoff where they've both been in this for years, probably centuries. We're going to get to that because that I say probably with big scare quotes around it. She wakes up before him. And that becomes part of the plot, is that she wakes up before he does. And so she can just go. And by the time he wakes up, she's already gone. So the only time that he can catch her is if she either A, doesn't leave, or B, wakes him up in the morning, which she does on most days. So it's just like, it was just this new, interesting twist on everything of like, you have a buddy, you're trapped in this loop with this buddy for however long, and then your buddy's gone. And now you're just back to where you were for who knows how long before this. And just like the different ways that goes, having to talk about like she goes up to him and she says, "Did we ever have sex?" He's like, "No." Well, it's not as simple as all that, is it? And they did have sex a lot, and she doesn't remember any of it.
But he remembers.
All of it.
Yeah.
And it's just so many fascinating ideas that then she gains this agency in the world. And also just, I love that moment when she confronts him for the first time, when they go through the portal and she comes storming out. He's in the pool and she comes storming out at him. And he's like, consequences. That's not... Consequences aren't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
There's no consequences.
And see, that makes me believe that he's been in it for a very long time.
Yeah.
Because it was a huge shock to him.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah. No, he has that same kind of, he's talked to everybody at the party. Yes. He knows everyone. He's had every experience. He's driven as far as he can. I love when he talks.
Where did he say he flew to? Didn't he say he made it as far?
Went somewhere in Mexico or
somewhere
something?
in Mexico, something like that. That was pretty funny.
Before he fell asleep. I love the idea that he talks about something that we don't see Phil talk about in Groundhog Day, where he's like, pain still hurts.
Yes.
Getting hurt still fucking sucks.
And if Phil talks about all the times he's died, but he doesn't talk about...
It's always a painless or seemingly painless experience.
Like a quick death.
Yeah. And Andy Samberg is like, no, when you get put on a dissection table because they want to find out why you can't get out of this time loop, and that's how you reset the time loop, is by having your brain opened up. Not great.
Yeah.
It's not great. And I love how they developed the style of this type of story. I will say, I do feel like one of the few issues I had with Palm Springs, because I would say, to me, Palm Springs was like a solid A. It wasn't perfect, but it was a lot of fun to watch, and I very much enjoyed it, especially considering I came into it. And Andy Samberg is such a weird hodgepodge of things. For as many times as I find something like Hot Rod that I fucking love for how stupid it is, there's something like Chip and Dale where I'm just like, this is so close and yet so far from what I want it to be. And the one where he's a pop star.
No, pop star, yeah.
Same thing. I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, but then with that, you get Brooklyn Nine-Nine. When you're like,
exactly.
Genius.
When it works, it fucking works.
He really does work.
And here, it really fucking works. I will say, I think that they didn't pace it out as well as Ramis did in the initial, where you really get a sense for how long he's been here without seeing how long he's been there. It's all about his actions and the way that he reacts to things, and the things that he's able to do, being able to rob the armored car because he knows the exact pace at which these events happen.
Learning the piano.
Exactly.
But I think, and we talked about this last week briefly, I think it's because they had to juggle two people.
Yeah.
So they couldn't necessarily show that dynamic of this individual because there's two.
Yeah.
And then how are you going to...
I just got to the point where she throws him a birthday party at the Roadhouse, and I was like, this feels like it's coming out of left field. Like, I get that they're friends, but it doesn't feel like you've developed them as a relationship enough for me to be like, yes, I buy this moment. I buy it because I really want to. So I really want this to work, so I'm going to get it. But much like our audio capture device, just because you really want something to work doesn't mean it will. And I was not willing to turn off the movie at that moment, but it was definitely a moment of like, how long have they been in here?
Yeah.
I don't really know as an audience member how long they've been in here, and that seems vaguely important to the whole of everything that's happening. And yet, I still love it, because you still have all those moments that you want to see in this type of movie. Which, are we going to call it a time loop? Is it a Groundhog's Day? There should be some. I mean,
I don't think you can. I mean, Groundhog's Day is a time loop. It's just the name of the movie. You know what I mean? It doesn't have nothing. Really has nothing to do with Groundhog's Day. It's just when it happens. So I would call it a time loop movie.
So I'll call it a Ramis time loop.
There you go, Ramis. There you go. Yeah. I like that, Ramis time loop.
So when you have a Ramis time loop movie, you have, like I was saying before, what do you do with that day?
Yes.
Because in some ways, this is, to me, heaven, whereas to a lot of people, it's hell. Because there's always a sense of, like, you know what's going to happen, and you can plan it out, and even though nothing new happens, you also are the most prepared, and you have unlimited time to do whatever you want.
Well, I think that's what they showed better in Groundhog's Day is Murray, you see at first kind of relishing in it, but then you got to assume that it's been potentially hundreds of years later when he gets into a suicide stage.
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's like heaven, but then it quickly can
after
turn
a while, it becomes hell.
Exactly.
And I don't think that they necessarily marinated in that enough here, but they did use it to good degrees, where Sarah, Christine Melodi's character, is learning quantum physics.
Yes.
And she takes all this time to learn quantum physics because she has all the time in the world. And I just love that moment where she calls the person in India to be like, hey, how does this work? What's going on with this? And he's like, why do you call me? You already know how all this works. I don't understand why you need my help. And just like, that's the kind of shit I love in time loop stuff, is you have all the time in the world. What are you going to do with it? And I also love the turn on it that they gave. Not just that the rules are different. She wakes up in the worst moment of her life for who knows how long.
Yeah.
The lowest, worst moment. And when that's revealed to us, that's such a great reveal. Not only because she's literally sleeping with Superman, but also because it's just such a different, like, you wake up to that song in Puxatawny, it's like, yeah, I could see that driving someone crazy. You wake up to sleeping with your sister's fiance the night before her wedding at the venue, and you wake up to that every day for millennia. No wonder she wants to get out. And that was such an interesting new tweak on everything.
Yeah.
I just like the characters. You know, even characters like Roy, who's J.K. Simmons' character.
He's fucking awesome. He was my favorite character.
I love this. I love this idea that it's Groundhog's Day, but there's two people. Except actually there's three people. But one of them has to drive from Texas every day to Arizona in order to confront them. So it takes him a while to get there. And I just, you look back on the beginning of the movie when Andy Samberg is sniffing the air and he looks at rustling bushes and he gets nervous, and then somebody walks out and they were just peeing in the bushes and he's like, oh, it was fine, just someone peeing in the bushes. And then you meet Roy and you're like, oh,
that's why he was so
that's why he was nervous.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool.
So I really like that. And I really like the heart-to-heart that he has with Roy towards the end of the movie, where he goes to see Roy and Roy's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And why the fuck should I talk to you? But he also has that moment where he was like, that last time they were worried I was going to slip into a coma, so they wouldn't let me sleep for like 3 months. And I had a lot of time to think. And I decided I'm not angry at you anymore. And I just love this approach and this thought process to the story, where it's not just like an asshole redeemed and it's not just an incident resolved. There's a bunch of different things that tie into this, and all the people that it's central to are centrally tied to it in such a effective way. So that even Roy, who is the kind of pseudo antagonist, the antagonist is the situation.
Yeah, the loop itself.
But he also serves as something of an antagonist in the story. Even he is just this remarkable character that you really learn to care for at the end. Like when he is talking about how he will never see his kids grow up and he loves his son, but he's just an idiot watering dog shit. And I'm like, that's really sad.
That's fucking deep.
That's powerful and sad. And it's all at once. You're like, so you're never going to have to deal with anything bad happening to your kids, and you have the perfect day with them. They will never get older. You will never see them move on to anything else in their life. And just that weight is so much heavier here than it is in Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, and it's because this is where I thought originally the negative having multiple characters, this is one of the positive having multiple characters, because each one is dealing with the situation in their own separate way. Yeah. And that's what I do like about this, is they did take the two main protagonists and separate them when she's learning astrophysics and all that. It's like they send them on their own paths even though they're still connected. And that was a nice little twist.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, I did like that.
I thought that was just so well done.
Yeah.
And like I said before, the fact that it takes away agency from him, where like if he wants to go and find her, it's up to her.
And it would have been easy for them to lean into, this is an Andy Samberg movie. Let's just make it about him like we did Bill Murray.
Let's make it wild and crazy.
Exactly.
You still have that. You still have moments like that where the dinosaurs show up and you're like, what the fuck? Are we going to get an explanation on this? No. Never. Not even kinda. Okay. So is it the mushrooms he's on? Not really, because you see him at the end of the movie when they're out of the time loop. Okay. What does it mean? I don't know what it means. But like, and also the fact that the time loop isn't open at the beginning of the day. You have to wait for the earthquake to happen. And then you can go and access the time loop if you need to. Just so many interesting ways to turn and twist this story and this idea in a really effective and engrossing way. It pulls you right in. And you're just like, I want to see more. I want to see more of how they deal with this, how they do that. And again, you get to the end of the movie, and first off, I do love the reveal that there's still things that they don't know about each other after all this time. Where he's like, I have a dog. And she's like, you have a dog? It's like, yeah, I gotta go pick him up
and
now.
That to me was a good character thing because it kind of shows how shallow they both were. Like, no matter what they've learned, they're still kind of the shallow person they were, to where it's like, you're spending thousands of years with a person and you don't know everything about them.
Exactly.
Obviously, you don't give a fuck to ask, do you have a fucking dog? Do you have any pets?
Some things just don't come up. Even after 1,000 years. It just never came up. And that was one of the moments that I really thought you got a sense of their relationship in a really solidified way, which is perfect because it comes at the very end of the movie. But I just really, I like the side characters too. Like we talk about how in Groundhog Day, it's so important to, or rather, it's viewed from Phil's perspective. And the side characters kind of get lost in that. Here, the side characters kind of take on a new life. Where we have like the parents and the bride and the groom.
Let's just call him Superman. We got to keep.
He is Superman.
He is Superman.
And then you have like the weird cousin that gets uncomfortable around people, and the girlfriend that Andy Samberg wakes up with every morning, and just like these characters that are the weird officiant who's carrying drugs. I love that moment where when we first see the backstory of Roy and Niles really getting into their initial moment of conflict. It's because Roy tells Niles, like, hey, the officiant in that stupid outfit, he has an ounce of coke in his suit pocket if you go up and get it. And Andy Samberg's like, fuck it, yeah, let's go. Let's fucking party. I really love the style and look of this movie. And I think it also counters Groundhog Day very well in that it takes place in a fucking desert. So you have ice and snow over here and a fucking desert over here. And it's a nice little movie, and I don't get to say that often these days.
It's one that I think I do like a lot of parts of it. I didn't like it as much as you, but I think I need to watch it one or two more times. Because I remember the first time I saw Groundhog Day, I thought it was good. I didn't really appreciate, like, I watched it as a Bill Murray movie. I didn't watch it as what's going on in the story. When I went into this, I kind of watched it as an Andy Samberg movie, and then I was surprised by J.K. Simmons. I was surprised by everything that went on. I think I need to see it again before I can give it a legit grade, because right now I'd be in that B to B minus. It's one of those ones that it's tough because it's only on Hulu.
Yeah, I know. This is the thing about Hulu, because my beloved Prey is trapped on Hulu.
No, you can buy a Blu-ray of it, but it's like $65 for a 4K Blu-ray.
That's what I'm saying, is that you can't really, like, you
Same
can.
with The Legend of Vox Machina, it's locked on Amazon Prime. They, like, I would buy a Blu-ray of that.
I would buy it on digital. I would buy it for full price on digital. But you locked it. Like the fucking Disney Vault. I'm waiting for Disney to do this in a way where they're going to stop manufacturing.
Lock all their bullshit away.
Well, they're going to stop manufacturing DVDs at some point. They're just gonna stop making it, and it's gonna be like, if you want to see it, you either have to see it in theaters or you have to get Disney Plus, and those are your options.
I'll be honest, that's kind of why I've been really amping up my like 4K Blu-ray collection, because of that thought. It's like there's gonna be a time where they're not gonna have physical media anymore.
No,
it's like fuck.
It's going to be kind of a gimmicky thing. It's going to be a movie that involves DVDs, and so they actually printed DVDs. Can you believe they printed DVDs for this movie?
Like, maybe if they switch to a new format, and now that the compact media discs, like cartridges for like the Switch, and more systems where they'll be able to compress things and make it look great. Like if you sell little cartridges or something, do something.
This is my thing is
I
that
need a physical media.
I always go back to what happens when Spectrum goes out. I have this amazing voodoo. What happens when Spectrum goes out? I still have power. I can still use everything. I just don't have internet.
Yep.
And now what am I going to do?
Yep.
Well, I guess you're going to have to rely on one of the many Blu-rays you do have.
That's why I'm happy I still have 2,000 physical discs in my house.
Yeah, you have Blu-rays like I have pop figures.
I have the majority of the things I have are DVDs.
Yeah.
But between Blu-rays and 4Ks, I got to be in like the 400 to 500.
I mean,
range.
I see Blu-ray and DVD as Betamax and VHS. You can say VHS and have it mean Betamax. You can say Betamax and have it mean VHS.
See, I thought that way until I saw the Blu-ray, like Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. And I was like, fuck. And then I saw the 4K. I'm using Lord of the Rings as my... I don't know if you ever heard of this, but when they kept changing ways to get music from 8-track to compact to tape to compact disc and all that. That's why Dark Side of the Moon kept being in the top 200 of sales, because people would buy Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd and that's how I am with Lord of the Rings. So like I originally got it on DVD and then I got a Blu-ray, but then when I got the 4K, the difference is fucking noticeable. Like you're like, holy shit, but they did it properly.
Yeah.
And so there are some 4K, like I just ordered The Abyss and True Lies, which are never went to Blu-ray.
I gotta see True Lies. I've never seen True Lies.
You never seen True Lies?
I've never seen True Lies.
I will let you borrow it.
I was gonna buy it on Vudu, but it was $10, and I was like, I can probably find this somewhere to watch.
I'm having the Blu-ray coming in 2 weeks, and it'll have the digital download, so I'll put it into my collection.
Yeah.
Wait till you see it. It's fucking awesome.
I'm excited.
It's one of my favorite James Cameron movies.
I'm excited.
It's so fucking good.
Because I have weird mixed feelings about James Cameron. I think he's brilliant. I also think that he's kind of a douchebag.
Oh no, he's a douchebag. But this is like, what's good about this is it's a fun action movie that does not take itself seriously.
Yeah.
Like it knows it's an.
And I think that's what I'm really looking forward to is that Titanic takes itself so seriously, and Avatar takes itself so seriously.
Like the head of this spy organization he works for is Charlton Heston in an eye patch.
Excellent.
It's like, come on. As soon as I saw him, I was like, this doesn't give a fuck about it.
Marvelous.
Yeah, and it's the only thing I can honestly say that I love Tom Arnold. Yeah. So there you go.
That's a hard sell. We were talking about Chris Elliott. Tom Arnold is a hard sell.
You'll watch this and be like, okay, this is the only thing I've ever liked him in. You will literally say that.
Tom Arnold will always be known in my mind for an episode of The Simpsons, Treehouse of Horrors, where they have to send all the smart people off Earth because Y2K happens and the robots are eating everybody. And so they get like Stephen Hawking and, all these genius people, and Lisa gets to go on the ship. And then there's another ship that Homer and Bart sneak onto, and it's a bunch of D-listers headed by Tom Arnold and Rosie O'Donnell being shot into the sun.
That's pretty amazing.
And I was like,
I don't think I've ever seen that. All right, so we got to get back on topic.
Yes.
Okay, so we got to move on to the final one, so we talked about two comedies, both similar and different at the same time.
How does it work if we change the genre?
Fucking spectacularly.
Really well.
Edge of Tomorrow, or I'm not going to say the other title, you can if you want.
Live.Die.Repeat.
Fucking stupid.
It's in my voodoo under Live.Die.Repeat.
I know.
It makes me crazy.
I know it is. This is a movie that when I saw it, I was like everyone else. When it came out, I was like, this looks kind of dumb, and the reviews were not the best. And then when I finally watched it, I was like, what the fuck? So it was 2014.
Yeah.
So it's really four main characters. Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, Bill Paxton as the Master Sergeant was fucking awesome, and Brendan Gleeson as the General. Yeah. Those are like the main four you see.
You have a few other people come in and out. You have some fodder that is going to later be pulled through the mill at one point or another.
So Tom Cruise plays this like cowardly officer. There's an alien attack on Earth.
I love the beginning of this movie.
He's never been in combat. Yeah, it's so
I love the beginning of this movie.
But he's never been in combat. He gets thrown into combat. He dies right away, but he gets in the time loop.
Yeah, he gets... So these aliens come, and they seem to have this infinite upper hand on humanity. Yeah. Where humanity...
It kind of reminded me of Starship Troopers a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Humanity thinks that they have a plan, they have some way to combat them, and then all of a sudden, they know that they're coming. How do they know that we're coming? Tom Cruise is a media guy going around trying to sell the war to be like, we got to bring as many young people in as we can to fight these aliens. It's gonna be bad, and we have these new mech suits, and these mech suits are cool and make it so you can do anything, and we will get there. I have weird feelings about the mech suits because I love them, and then I'm like, wait a minute, and then I'm like, wait, I think I do love them.
It kind of reminds me. Did you ever see The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yes.
Remember when Jesse Ventura, they're ready to put him in, and he comes in with that armor on. He goes, "I'm not wearing this shit." It kind of reminded me of that first, because I'm like, is that real?
Yeah.
Did they just cobble that together? But you're right. It kind of grows on you.
It grows on you as you're watching it, especially like, so when you first see it in action, even the people that purport to have worn it a lot look like they're moving in quicksand.
Yes.
Like they don't seem to know what they're doing. But then as we progress through the story, you get to see Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt kind of show what it looks like when someone knows what they're doing and they're wearing one of these. And that's the moment I'm like, okay, I like this. And then I look back at the beginning, I'm like, I kind of like it too, that nobody knows how to use them, because it's purported to be this super easy fundamental thing that anybody can climb in and just use on day one. And nobody looks comfortable in it. And it all looks sloppy and slow.
And it is a good analogy showing humanity with new technology, where at first we're like, I don't fucking know. Yeah.
And I just love because like I also love exoskeletons. They're not used enough. And this is a really great use of them.
Every time I think of exoskeletons, I think about fucking G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra, and I want to bang my head against the table.
Those stunt suits.
Oh, they were so fucking stupid. Okay, let's get back in the go.
Anytime you bring the Wayans brothers in on something,
I know.
I'm kind of like, is this a good idea?
Brendan Fraser, Sergeant Slaughter, makes me puke
I think this is a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea.
So anyway, Tom Cruise gets attacked by one of these aliens, and a bunch of its blood spilled on him, and now he's in the loop.
He's in the time loop.
He's in the Ramis loop.
He gravitates toward the literal poster child for the military, which is Emily Blunt, who is so badass in this fucking movie. Yeah. I was like, God damn. She's like, great. Even when you see her doing like the 1-arm push-ups and shit, I was like, God damn.
And the stress yoga. Yes. Where you have a bunch of machines flying around you while you do your yoga at incredibly slow pace, so your muscles really have to work the entire
She reminded me more than any other female protagonist since Aliens of Ripley.
Yes.
So fucking much she reminded me of her.
Yes, she is very much of that ilk.
Yes.
But like, if Sarah Connor were more likable. Because she's still...
T2 Sarah Connor.
She's still harder... Yeah, not T1 Sarah Connor. But she's still harder-edged than someone like Ripley in a lot of situations. Because she just has this like, oh, it didn't work, I'm going to kill you right now. Yeah. Because that's how you reset the day. Whereas in other things you fall asleep or the day just resets on its own. Here, it resets when you die. Yeah. And Tom Cruise is the only one in this loop. Rita, Emily Blunt's character, was in the loop. She got taken out of the loop because she got blood transfusion. And now he's the only one in the loop.
But she's aware of
But she knows. She knows of the loop.
So what's the first time she says, find me?
Find me.
And then he dies right away. That was like kind of awesome.
Yeah. No, but like that's what's cool is that because it's an action movie, this was one of the movies we were talking about bad video game movies.
Yes.
This is one of the first movies where I was like, this is a video game.
It really fucking is.
This is a fucking video game.
So fucking is.
And it's so cool after you get into that zone where especially you have the moment where Tom Cruise is storming the beach and he gets blindsided by something. And he's like, damn it, 4 steps.
Yes. And this is going on what you were talking about that was missing in Palm Springs, where it's like he's learning from what's going on, and you see it fucking happen.
Yeah. I wish so badly this wasn't Tom Cruise.
I know.
This is probably my favorite Tom Cruise role outside of Ethan Hunt. I think Ethan Hunt, just because like
I'm still Minority Report. To the end of days, I fucking love that movie.
I have things with eyeballs that make Minority Report very difficult to watch. So I'm gonna just be fully honest. I don't like that. But I like him here. I just wish it was literally any other actor.
And that's sad. It's gotten to the point where it's like, fuck, Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's interesting about this is that they use that against type, because you have Tom Cruise play this at first.
Yes.
He plays this coward.
Yep.
And it's so against Tom Cruise type. So when he shows up and you're like, ugh, Tom Cruise. he doesn't play it like Tom Cruise until about a third of the way into the movie. And then you get to see him as Tom Cruise doing all of his Tom Cruise-y things. But like in the initial, you're like, this guy's gonna fucking die. Yeah. This guy's gonna fucking die. And I like the style and feel of this movie. I will say the third act kind of loses it once he loses the loop. Mm-hmm. Once he's kicked out of the loop, that's the moment I think the movie kind of takes a step back, because it's that idea of how does the loop affect someone when faced with X? So time, money, resources. Here, how does someone stuck in a loop deal with it when faced immediately with the military, where the military can just scoop you up and put you on a table and dissect you and do all these other things. And Emily Blunt talks about, like, you don't want to have that happen. It's really bad, and I had it happen, and I cannot stress enough, do not recommend. Don't do it. So when he does get in an accident and they do the blood transfusion and he's out of the loop, that's the moment, because now we're relying on these, these GIs that they're working with, the 7th Squad or whatever. And I don't like any of them. So like when they start dying off at the end of the movie, I'm like, this doesn't really mean anything to me, and I don't care about any of these guys in the first place. And now we're relying on them and Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise to get us through, but that it's kind of diminished as a result of having all of these, fodder pieces that are just going to get fed into the shredder at some point. And it's not bad, but it definitely felt the most like an action movie, like a generic action movie. It stopped feeling like its own movie, and it started feeling like a generic action movie. And it kind of took a step back for me at that point. The ending is fine. I don't necessarily have an issue with the happy ending. I just also kind of look at it logically. I mean, there's a few moments like that. Whereas in other things, when you're watching Palm Springs and certain things happen, you kind of just roll with it, because those certain things are like, yeah, this person's going to be at this bar. This person's going to be at this bar, and they're going to be sitting in this booth, and if you go here at this time, they will be there. Okay. This is like Tom Cruise has to know which car to have Emily Blunt steal and when to stop so they don't get in an accident. And after a while, because it's like 2 hours of these kinds of little tiny events, you just feel a little strung along. I remember the moment where they get the van was the first moment in the movie where I was like, what's going on? Because they start rushing that time jumpism. The Ramis loop starts accelerating to this point where we aren't even sure scene to scene whether this is the same run
or is
this a new run? How many different runs has this been? And it kind of throws you off after a while of like, where are we? When are we? What day is it? What's going on? And like, I guess that kind of feeds into the character's point of view too, of just everything kind of just starts muddying together. But as an audience, you're just kind of thrown off by it to the point where you're like, I don't understand what's happening, because he said this and then nothing happened as a consequence. He said, make sure you take the trailer off the van, and then nothing happens because they don't take the trailer off the van. Why was that so important? Why did we have to have a whole conversation about it? It clearly killed them at some point, so why doesn't it kill them here? And the whole thing with the helicopter, is the helicopter fueled up? We got to just wait as long as possible to get into the helicopter. Their romance in general, I felt, was, of the three romances, it is by far the least necessary.
That's a good way to describe it.
You just don't buy it.
It doesn't fit with the loop.
No.
And it's like and by having the romance, you're taking away, I think, some of the gravitas of Emily Blunt's character, because she is the strong. It's not that she's a woman; she's a strong human that can kick ass. Yeah. But when you make her Tom Cruise's love interest, then you're like,
well, now it becomes like he doesn't want to do certain things because he doesn't want her to die, and and it's just like, first off, she shows no reciprocation for any of these feelings that you might have. Second off, I don't believe you have these feelings. I think you have these feelings because it's one person who actually knows what you're going through, and so you're manifesting that as love. But like a teenage boy, like some kind of Romeo, I'm just going to sit here and be like, you've known her for like, not literally, but like, I don't buy this romance. I don't know if it's the Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt side of it, because I had that issue with Jungle Cruise.
Well, here's the thing with... I'm wondering if it's because of Tom Cruise's relationship with the writer, Christopher McQuarrie, because I didn't realize he's written 8 movies for Cruise.
He does a lot of the Mission Impossible movies.
He had written Valkyrie and Jack Reacher for him. Mm-hmm. And then it was this, and then, Mission Impossible, The Mummy, Mission Impossible again, Top Gun Maverick, and then the last Mission Impossible. Yeah. But it's like, is this one of those things where Tom Cruise is like, okay, we need to take that alpha and rotate it onto me off of her, and the best way to do it is to have a love.
She needs to be subservient to me as my love
interest.
So
that's what I'm wondering, if that's what caused this, is him getting in the writer's room and
it's definitely the thing in the story that doesn't make any fucking sense. No. There shouldn't be a love interest here. This has nothing to do with love. And the idea that he would turn into this sick puppy dog lover is just like, I don't get it. It doesn't fit with his character.
It does take away from the theme you get from the early part of the movie, which is, not every movie, TV, book has to have fucking love interest. Like, you can have men and women, they don't have to make nookie.
Yes. No, exactly.
Just have them be living in the same world together and fighting aliens and shit.
Exactly. Like, this is something that we've been arguing for as an audience since I was a kid. It's just this idea of like, there doesn't always have to be a love interest. No. This isn't the 1940s. Nope. We don't have to have some, I'm always reminded of the original Mummy, where you have these 2 kids fall in love for no fucking reason. Yeah. That has nothing to do with anything. They don't have any chemistry. They don't have any moments together that you're like, oh, these 2 are cute together. Nothing. They just fall in love because some studio head said, we need a romance in this movie to attract women. And here it feels like we need a romance in this movie to dull the Tom Cruise of it all and make him more humble, more believable, more empathetic. I don't know, but it's just this left field throw that doesn't do anything for the plot.
Especially it changes the character dynamics of both these. Well, maybe not him, but her.
Oh, definitely.
And it's like, why would you do that? Yeah. Like, you built this great character, and then you're gonna fuck it all up. Like, what are you gonna do next? Throw Bill Paxton in for a threesome or something? It's like, why would you fuck it up like that?
And especially because the writing is so crisp at times. I love the scene where they go and see Brendan Gleeson, and Tom Cruise is doing the thing where he's calling out the different things, and he says that waiter's gonna drop that pan of dishes in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And he's doing all the things you love to see in a Ramis loop. Yeah. And I'm just sitting here like, man, I wish this was anybody but Tom Cruise, because this would be pulled off so much better as he's pulling it off. I mean, Tom Cruise is not an uncharismatic person, but similar to Bill Murray, it's this charisma kind of against your will, where you're kind of like, I guess he's cool. I don't want to think that he's cool, but I guess he's cool.
I had a thought when I watched this, and I'm going to steal one of your ideas from earlier, and by idea I mean person. What if instead of Tom Cruise, instead of a man, if it was like Charlize Theron? Yeah. And so you have her as, I'm just this, I'm just a woman. I'm working with this and that.
I'm only supposed to be on TV.
And then she gets thrown. They're like, we need everybody. So you need to go. And then she meets Emily Blunt. Emily Blunt is like a role model to her, and like, this is what I can be. And then she becomes. And then instead of a love interest, it's like there are these 2 badasses, and you could pull it off with that.
And that's another thing. Tom Cruise was too old for this role, too. Tom Cruise doesn't play old, but Tom Cruise was in his 50s. I think that this is a role much better for someone in their early 40s.
Yeah, he was 52.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, 52 when they were making this.
When they were making it.
Yeah, he was like 54 when it came out.
So, but he looks like a guy in his 50s. And I get it, he's a major, but he's also not like a major that's seen combat. He's a major, like he's a lieutenant in A Few Good Men. He's never actually seen combat. He just earned that rank off field. So, like, I don't know that you need it to be Tom Cruise. I mean, like, obviously Tom Cruise was chosen to sell the movie. But even that didn't work because the studio still had to come in. The reason we have 2 titles for this movie is because even though it got pretty good reviews and it was pretty well received, nobody saw it. And the studio said, it's because of the title. Hence, Live.Die.Repeat. Because Edge of Tomorrow was apparently too vague. And so studio said, you know what? Let's just call it Live.Die.Repeat.
I didn't realize this. One of the executive producers was Stephen Mnuchin, the guy that ran the Fed for Donald Trump and his administration.
Oh my God.
can't believe
sucks.
I'm looking through the executive producers.
Oh, I wish I didn't know that.
Oh, that's fucking funny.
Oh,
that's goddamn funny.
Old fish.
Of all the people to see as the fucking executive producer.
Jesus Christ.
But he was working for Goldman Sachs, so I'm wondering if that's just where they got their funding through.
Probably.
That's probably just where it was. It sounds like we didn't like this movie, but we did like the movie.
I like this movie a lot.
Liked it a lot.
I like this movie a lot. The pacing and style of this movie is so good, and the look of it is just so good. There's just a few things that I would tweak to make it better. I like your idea of having a Charlize Theron, or even like, hell, I would take a Kristen Stewart.
But here's the thing: it was written and directed by men. They would have them do a lesbian scene. So it's it's fuck, especially in 2014.
Well, look at Atomic Blonde. Atomic Blonde still has a whole love interest.
Yeah, that's true.
With a lesbian love interest who she meets in East Germany while on mission. So
yeah, it's like fuck.
Yeah,
I really want them to get away from, like, not everything has to be about fucking.
No, I know.
You could have a story and have wonderful action.
Agree. I think it's stupid.
It's so dumb.
It's as stupid as, well, I don't want to say stupid. It's as frustrating as certain elements of Groundhog's Day is when you're watching it and you're just like, Phil, just stop.
Yeah.
Stop. I don't know what this is that you're. I'm thinking of the scene where he's building a snowman for the second time. That we see. Who knows how many times he's built that snowman. But it's the second time he's building the snowman with Rita. And the kids come over and start doing a snowball fight. And he's just forcing every moment to happen in the hopes that he can get Rita into bed. And that is kind of the studio with this movie. Yeah. Is we're just going to force everything through instead of just letting what happened happen. Yeah. And just letting it be on its own. We're going to try and force all these things to happen and make it happen. And it just doesn't work. Yeah. So, but I love the movie.
No, I love the movie.
It's a great movie.
Especially like you were saying, the first two acts.
Yeah.
Are awesome.
They're so good.
They're so fucking
I
good.
love the like little things. The scene that we get where he has failed numerous times at this point, and he gives up. He goes and he gets a beer in London. He leaves the base, gets a beer in London, and still dies because the monsters, as soon as they finish at Normandy, come right across the channel and wipe out England. And so he still is just getting a beer, and he just looks out, and there's just monsters coming out of the water. Yeah. And it's just like, even that is a great moment of just him being like, I fucking give up. I don't know what to do. And then he still can't escape it because it's still going to happen anyway. And he just resets the day, and now you're just like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You got 12 hours to figure out what you want to do about this. And I think that they could have paced out some of those time loop moments a little better, a little cleaner, so that we aren't just seeing, we don't get to see him learning as much as we get to see Bill Murray learning. We just get to see him having already acquired all the knowledge. So he knows how to make her tea, and he knows where to find clothes for them. And he knows that if he waits long enough, or rather he hopes if he waits long enough, he can avoid what he knows is going to happen, which is her dying, which we still don't get an honest explanation of why she doesn't die in this timeline. Like, there are definite gaps in the storytelling, but the look and feel of the movie makes up for that, I think, in a lot of ways.
I agree. And it is, I got to give a shout out. I know I mentioned already, it is the last major role of Bill Paxton before he died 3 years later. Yeah. And he was fucking awesome. Like,
he's great.
I love it when he plays these hard-ass characters. Like, I like his comedic side, and you'll see in True Lies, he plays a fucking scumbag, and it's awesome. But, like, when he plays the tough guy, he can pull it off so fucking well.
I just always go back to the divergence between Aliens and Weird Science.
Oh yeah, yeah.
like both of these meathead characters played very differently. Yeah. Both for comedy effect, both done very differently.
And the funny part is, in between seeing those two, I saw Near Dark, and he plays one of the vampires in it, and he plays like the psycho, and he's not, like, if you ever see the poster, it's him with like his face all burned off and stuff, and it's like, fuck, this guy's got range.
Yeah.
And what was the one he did with, was it Fracture? Was it him and Matthew McConaughey? They did,
was this during the Dante's Peak?
I'm going to look it up.
Volcano
real
era?
Quick.
Yeah.
It's one where I want to say Bill Paxton is, Frailty. Great movie. It's Matthew McConaughey. It's like him in modern time, and he has these flashbacks of Bill Paxton when he was his father.
Oh yes.
And it's like a horror movie.
Yes, I do know this movie. They turned it into a TV show for the CW.
Later. where the father thinks he's slaying demons, but he's actually just killing fucking people. Yeah. He's a serial killer. And it's really it's a really good Matthew McConaughey movie, but Bill Paxton plays a creepy fucking dude. Great movie.
I just love that moment where they're talking the first day in, and he asks Tom Cruise, "Where are you from?" And Tom Cruise is like, "Somewhere in, I can't remember, somewhere in New Jersey." And he's like, "Why is it called that?" And Tom Cruise says, "Well, where are you from?" And he says, "Science Hill, Tennessee." And Tom Cruise says, "Well, why is it called Science Hill?" And he says, "I don't know. Didn't give a damn."
That's fucking awesome.
I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty good."
It was a great line read. Yeah. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed Groundhog's Day, the episode, and you know what? Go back and listen to it 17 times to really get the effect of Groundhog's Day.
You'll learn so much if you just re-listen to it over and over.
You will hear
things
you didn't hear before, and you will hear our growth as far as storytellers on our own. So this was Nerdpod Generations episode 129. Next week's a big 130, and we might be doing a watch and review. I don't want to spoil it yet in case it doesn't happen. I think if it doesn't happen, we'll
have our backup.
The Marvels
held to pay for both of us.
Exactly. But hopefully next week we have a really good surprise episode for you. But Nerdpod Generations episode 129. Please go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and like our show. Subscribe to our show. Same thing on YouTube. Let us know what you think in the comments of our videos. Please listen to the Obi-Wan videos. They are so amazing. Please, I beg you, they're so good.
We'll see you next week, friends and enemies.
I cannot wait.
Until then, you can find me at judsumstudios.work or on YouTube.
Find me in the ether.
Yes. The best place to find us is on YouTube, because that is where we will definitely see, and they already have comment sections built in that we don't have to do shit about.
And there are some videos earlier in the podcasting where we actually see our faces.
You can see our faces.
Which I apologize for that.
Yeah, no, I cannot tell you to go and see our faces, but you can.
Hey, our new logo.
The new logo is real good.
That's fucking awesome. New logo, man.
Speaking of, new logo was by Kortney Howell.
She's amazing.
And our theme is by Brendan Williams and James Connelly. And until next week, friends and enemies, we'll see you again soon.
Peace.
Possibly with lots of anger in our hearts.
Oh, God.
We're going to see.
We'll see.